this video I'm going to talk about a subject that's certainly something that's played a big part in my own anxiety experience. I want to talk about hyperventilation or overbreathing. Now I want to dedicate this video to a friend of mine called Dottie, who's been through a particularly hard time of it recently with anxiety, and through what we've discussed between ourselves, it's very clear that Dottie has been suffering the severest effects of hyperventilation, because it was very similar to what I used to experience some years ago. So I want to talk about how hyperventilation affects anxiety, indeed how it becomes a part of anxiety, and also about some of the techniques I've used myself to deal with it. Now, hyperventilation means that you're breathing too much for your body's needs. You're breathing in too much oxygen and you're breathing out too much carbon dioxide. And it's the loss of carbon dioxide that causes the problem, basically. Your body reacts in particular ways when carbon dioxide starts to drop. And these effects can be very startling and very frightening if you're not, if you're not sure what is actually happening. Now, my first experience of hyperventilation was a long time ago. It goes back to the days that I talked about in my earlier videos. When I was 18, I actually, at the time when I was frightened of the problem I seemed to be having with my breathing, I can remember that I overcompensated it at the time by breathing very, very fast indeed. And that produced some very strange effects. It's well known in the literature that this can happen, but if you're not familiar with these strange symptoms, then it can be very frightening indeed. Now, what used to happen with me is, apart from every part of me sort of going pins and needles and tingling, I found that my fingers and my wrists used to kind of flex involuntarily like that. They used to sort of curl up, and I didn't understand it at the time, and it was particularly upsetting because I thought something terrible was happening. And it's called a tetanic contraction. It just means that the muscles, because of very low carbon dioxide, are actually contracting, and that is one of the sets of muscles that are affected particularly. So that's one effect. Now, there are so many, if you look at hyperventilation, you'll see there are many, many different symptoms, and they bear very many similarities to anxiety itself. In fact, through my own research into the subject, it seems that hyperventilation alone can be just the cause of a number of things. Specifically, it can be the cause of panic attacks. And I can attest to that myself, because that's certainly how it seemed to happen with me the first time I had panic attacks. Now, breathing too fast, apart from the fact that it washes out too much carbon dioxide and has all these muscular effects, it also affects the supply of oxygen to your brain, and that's why, one of the reasons why you get lightheaded, very dizzy, and that's certainly something I experience these days, in keeping with my particular issue I have with dizziness at the moment. Now, I spent quite a number of years where hyperventilation used to really seriously affect me on a regular basis. Now, it began because as I've talked about elsewhere, I used to get these endless headaches, really severe headaches, and my reaction to that was always to breathe too fast. Now, what used to happen, I used to start the day with a headache, wake up with one, and then things used to go downhill after that. I used to start breathing faster and faster, and it used to build up into what I can only describe as a state of terror. It was in some ways similar to panic in that it was very intense fear, but it was different from panic. Panic tends to come as a sudden flash, a sudden release of adrenaline into your bloodstream, whereas this was a slow but steady build-up. Not necessarily slow, it used to be quite rapid sometimes, but it was something that used to go on an entire day, and it used to go on into the night as well. And it used to affect me in such terrible ways because I used to feel just kind of totally terrified, and I couldn't think of a single thing to do about it. I couldn't figure out what I needed to do to bring this under control. Now, I was aware that my breathing was much too rapid. I was basically panting, like this all the time. But I used to feel so dreadful that I felt powerless to affect it. And of course this was happening at the same time as I had all this intense pain from these headaches. So in many days were kind of lost to this. I used to spend the day just unable to do anything really. I used to just pace up and down. I used to find myself crying a lot, just in desperation, trying to think of some way to relieve all this fear. This is what it was like. It was like this intense, prolonged fear, just terror. It was very difficult to describe. It was like I was dying. It felt that bad. And many's the time in the midst of one of these sessions I really wished I was dead, because I used to think, please just make it stop, just make it end. And I tried all kinds of things as both to relieve the headaches and to stop myself getting into this state. But eventually I was able to, through my own investigations, finally discovered that everything I was feeling on those occasions was entirely due to hyperventilation. All the symptoms I got were just that, and even though I knew it was that, I couldn't stop doing it. I just couldn't figure out how to do it. I knew about breathing exercises. I knew about things you're supposed to do just to kind of regulate your breathing. But everything I tried that was aimed at affecting my breathing didn't work. It just wouldn't work. So this pattern used to go on and on and on. Now, I eventually got to a stage where I was able to resolve this headache issue, and that began to break the cycle of fear. Now, it wasn't just the headaches that made me breathe fast. I used to breathe fast anyway, and it's always been my particular response to a lot of things, just to breathe quickly. I mean, it is an anxiety symptom, of course it is in itself. It's one of the things that happen when you've got adrenaline going around your body. It makes you breathe faster. But it's it was the fact that it was just kind of endless. I couldn't think of a single thing that would actually stop it happening. And in the days I used to, like I said, I used to go on into the night, and I went to bed, and I still used to be like this, and shivering and shaking with it as well. That used to go on throughout the day as well. I used to go to bed and just lie there with all this going on because I couldn't sleep for hours and hours. Eventually, exhaustion used to take over, and I used to finally go to sleep. And most times when I awoke after it, I used to feel very weak, very drained. But the headache was gone, and the breathing had kind of sorted itself out. So this state of affairs continued for some years, and these days I used to live in terror of them happening, because once they got going, there seemed no way to stop it. It just seemed to take on a life of its own. I used to write about it in my journal. I used to bemoan it over and over again. This thing just kept on repeating itself. Anyway, because of my knowledge and understanding what I already had, Claire Weeks and all the other things I've talked about here, I was able to sort of figure out basically what I needed to do. And I mentioned that nowadays I still do suffer from overbreathing, and the way I've developed that works for me is basically still based on Claire Weeks' ideas, because that's this is what I've found to work. But having said that, I know there are so many different techniques for regulating your breathing that exist at the moment, so many different breathing retraining techniques, if you like. But these are all well and good if you're in a state, you're not in this terrified state. Speaking just for myself, if I tried to use any of these methods deliberately to slow my breathing down, all it succeeded in doing was to make it worse, make it much worse. So even though I tried to do it on many occasions, tried to slow my breathing down, just let it come by itself, I couldn't do it. I could not make it work. So the problem just persisted. However, over the course of time, and even this is true even nowadays when I find myself breathing too fast, I learned how to gradually defuse this situation. Now, it's a pretty obvious kind of way of dealing with it if you think about it when I describe it. It takes a bit of practice. It's not something that I learned to do immediately, that used to kind of switch off these terrifying days I used to have, but I practiced doing it, and I learned how to keep myself from getting into this highly accelerated state where my breathing was just out of control. I learned how to stop that from happening. I also learned how to gradually bring this fast breathing rate down to what it should be. Now, in the literature on the subject, it says that normal breathing rate when you're at rest is some 7 to 14 breaths a minute. Now, I used to measure my own breathing rate when I was in these states, and it used to be in excess of 30 breaths per minute, which twice what it should have been. So it was clearly way too fast. Anyway, what I learned to do is basically still an application of Claire Weeks' ideas. I learned that if I just sat down, like I am now, just sat comfortably in a chair, making sure that there was no restriction to my breathing here or here, that I could breathe free. I wasn't kind of hunched up or doubled over in any way which would restrict my breathing here. Because what I should have been doing was breathing from down here rather than from up here, which is chest breathing, as it's called. That sort of breathing is fine with exercise. If your body demanding more oxygen, then that comes into play. But normally speaking, you breathe down here, abdominal breathing. So you need to sit comfortably in the chair and just make sure that you're unrestricted, your breathing's unrestricted. So what I used to do, I used to sit down, just breathing fast, and I used to sit there and just kind of let myself go as much as I was able, and just tell myself repeatedly, slow down. I used to keep saying this over and over to myself, slow down. Now, I wasn't trying to force my breathing to go slower, because I knew that didn't work. What I was doing instead was to allow my breath to slow down, let my body slow it down for me. And this, you can think of this in a similar way to what happens if you're out of breath following exercise. If you've been running or exercising and you stop yourself to get your breath back, and at those conditions you have to wait. You have to wait until you get your breath back, till your body kind of slows down and your breathing slows down. So this is what it's like, only this time you're kind of recovering from anxiety exercise, if you like. It's all this fast breathing is, like I said, it's an accompaniment to anxiety. What you're trying to do by just sitting here and letting breathing slow down is exactly the same, really. You're letting your body return to a more, to a normal state as far as you can. Now, in the beginning, when I started doing this, I was too preoccupied with all the other physical effects that I was feeling because of the overbreathing. I used to be, my particular problem I used to have was nausea, really severe nausea. And this is because one of the other effects of low carbon dioxide is that all your muscles, not just your external muscles, tense up, but your internal muscles do as well, such as your stomach muscles and your abdominal muscles too. So you feel this squeamish, sick feeling as your muscles kind of contract, and plus your bowels, you feel like your bowels are cramping and that you're going to have terrible diarrhea, which in some cases I did. So this is the problem I found to start with, is that I was very, very aware of all the other things that were going on, and frightened by them, frightened that letting go, as I was attempting to do, was actually going to make things worse. It's exactly the same, really, as practicing what Claire Weeks used to advise, accepting your physical symptoms, but it was very specific for this very strange, prolonged hyperventilation syndrome, I suppose you could call it, because it was very specific to that cause. It wasn't just anxiety in the normal sense of the word. It was this feeling was brought on by your body's reaction to to the very low carbon dioxide. In effect, to your body, it seemed as if you were suffocating. That's kind of the way it reacted, in that not only do all your muscles tense, but what also happens is low carbon dioxide triggers your sympathetic nervous system to overreact, which, as you know, that causes adrenaline to be pumped into your bloodstream. So you end up in this state of abject terror. So in the early days of me trying this, I used to be sitting there and just trying to allow my breathing to slow down, but at the same time there was also my very sick stomach. There was trembling as well, terrible trembling. It used to go on and on all day. Plus, as often was the case, the headache, the very intense headache. And it took me quite a few times of doing this to finally realise that by just letting things slow down by themselves, letting me get my own breath back, as if I'd been exercising, all the feelings associated with the low carbon dioxide gradually used to go away. Now, it didn't happen immediately. It used to take quite some minutes of doing this, to let the actual imbalance be rectified. So the balance between the two gases in your bloodstream starts to be equalised, so that there's not an excess of one over the other. And I used to find that a very effective way of dealing with this problem. Even today, occasionally I find myself breathing too fast for various reasons. I'm not necessarily aware of it sometimes, but I feel the effects of it. I don't normally get as bad as I did in those days. I don't get day-long sessions of this because I know how to diffuse it now. I know that if I sit down like I described and just let my breathing calm itself down, usually now it takes me sort of 5, 10, 15 minutes sometimes just to relax my breathing enough to take away these over-breathing effects. And I've also, I've used this too with, if I've ever felt, to deal with the effects of panic. And I can describe another incident I had recently which just kind of illustrates that. So it is, like I said, it's really Claire Weeks' technique in action for a specific thing. It's letting things happen. It's letting breathing sort itself out, which is what it will do if you give it a chance. But you're not giving it a chance, you keep on and on and on. Breathe, 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 faster and faster, which is what I used to do. I should stress that this is not something that you can necessarily get to work instantly. You have to keep at it, keep doing it, keep practicing it. Just as you have to do that with all the other techniques. And I know from my conversations with Dottie that she finds that these sessions come on so quickly, very, very quickly, and the effects are so intense. The anxiety is just unbelievable. It's accompanied by all these awful symptoms, like heaving and gagging, shaking, and all the things I used to get. I used to get these very prolonged feelings. But this is how I learned to deal with it, and it's a question of just repeated practice. Now there is another technique which is, old-fashioned, if you like, technique of dealing with overbreathing, which is the paper bag technique. And for some odd reason nowadays it's not considered to be a good option for dealing with hyperventilation, which I don't really understand why it's thought of like that. It has been something I've used. I particularly used to use it in my when panic came back to my life 12 years ago. And I used to do it in a very specific way. I didn't used to sort of clasp a bag over my face for ages and ages. I used to do it in a very particular way. I used to do it like this. I used to take the bag, make sure it was a big enough bag so you can get a proper breath in and out, not a little tiny one. And clasp it over my nose and my mouth and just breathe, perhaps, if you're breathing fast, half a dozen times. Then take the bag away for perhaps up to half a minute. It's not critical, the timing of this. It's how you feel in yourself that kind of dictates it. And after that short break, you put the bag back over your face as you have done. Breathe again for perhaps 5 or 6 times. Just slowly, you're very slowly causing the carbon dioxide to be restored to your bloodstream, because you're rebreathing the carbon dioxide that you're breathing out. So when you breathe in from the bag, you're breathing it back in again, and this starts to put right the balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide. So I used to do that. I used to breathe in for a bit, then take the bag away, back again, take it away. I used to do this for perhaps 5 or 10 minutes. I could feel the effect of doing this. I could feel it mostly here, because I used to get this awful nausea with it. I used to find that gradually, if I calm myself down doing it this way, I could feel the change coming over me, the fear that was present with it as well. It used to kind of gradually fall away. And whatever people say about using this method, I've always found it, if you do it like the way I just described, I found it very effective. Now, one thing, as with so much in anxiety, is the fear of these things happening again that keeps you in this state of kind of dread over them happening. And whenever you stay in this state of mind where you're dreading something to happen, of course, you're kind of inviting it to come back. How could it not really? You're expecting it to come back, and experience, you know that it has come back. And like I said, with me, I used to dread it so much because of what it used to do for such a long, horrible. It just felt like a day of physical torture to me. It's like there was no relief from it. There was nothing I could do to make it feel any better. It just used to go on and on. And this is what is so upsetting about it, because it's so relentless. And once I fully understood all these weird effects from hyperventilation, fully understood what I was doing, then I could, that's how I worked out what I needed to do. So there are plenty of documented symptoms that are described with hyperventilation. It's easy enough to find out what they are, such as not just the lightheadedness, it's the effects it has on you, making you feel tired, because something else strange happens when carbon dioxide drops to very low levels in your body. It actually causes whatever oxygen is in your blood that you're breathing in by your lungs, it causes it to be kind of stuck to the blood cells that circulate in your blood to carry oxygen around your body, which means that your body is kind of being deprived of oxygen as well. It's an effect called the Bohr effect, B-O-H-R, Bohr effect. And your blood cells are very reluctant to give up their oxygen to your bodily cells, which is kind of a paradox when you think about it. But that can contribute not just to the feelings in your head, but to a general feeling of great tiredness and weakness, because your body's not getting the oxygen it needs for your cells. So that's something else which I learned, and I can certainly agree with that, because I used to feel so exhausted after all these sessions. And, that was the reason why. So those are just two techniques that I've learned, but overall, with all these things, it's just having the right attitude. It's finding out information, it's finding out the facts of what is actually happening, which in effect is actually fully facing what you're experiencing. And this is what I did. I just thought, I can't tolerate this any longer, so I've got to find a way of dealing with it. And I did. And this is what I use now. Even these days, especially these days when I'm out, hyperventilation still plays a big part in my life, and I have tried various breathing exercises in my calmer moments, when I can kind of practice a more healthy type of breathing. And I've not had a great success with it, but I do know that once my general levels of anxiety go down, so does my breathing rate as well. I've had this problem since my teens when I first experienced it. But you gradually learn to take a different approach, take a different attitude to all these things. And I'm not trying to sound glib, because I know just how severe this kind of terror that you feel is, because I suffered so many days of it. But at the same time, apart from realizing the effect was caused by hyperventilation primarily, I realized that I was doing this to myself. It wasn't my body keep on making me breathe fast by itself. It was me reacting in fear to the fast breathing, so the cycle continued, just as it does with all the other anxiety symptoms. The more you try it and stop it, the more you try and control it and fight it, the longer it goes on. Whereas if you let your body sort itself out in that respect, it does. It simply does, but you have to give it a chance. So there you are. Just wanted to do this for Dottie, so this makes sense to you, Dottie, because I do understand just how awful this experience can be. And this is not something I've really come across in any of the literature on the subject, not something that is specifically related to breathing too fast. So there you are. Something that can be tried out, something that can be practiced. It certainly needs practice. But what I tried to do when I started these techniques was to not set my expectations too high. It was just something to kind of experiment with. So that's what I did, and I gradually mastered it and got the hang of it. Anyway, I think that'll do for this recording, and I hope the sound quality is good. I'm having to use a rather ancient microphone because my other one's not operational at the moment. But I wanted to do this for Dottie because, like I said, she's had a really tough time of it lately. Something for you to watch and listen to, Dottie, when you feel the need. Anyway, until next time, thank you for watching, and bye for now.